What are ethereal Cantarella's biggest pros and cons? That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. The very first time I made a Cantarella pros and cons, I said at the start of the video that it would be hard to justify getting her, even with her positive qualities taken into account. But thankfully, this has all turned around, thanks to one particular character's recent release, Phrolova. I'm happy to announce that it finally feels like Cantarella has a genuinely good meta use case. She's of course always been pretty flexible and been able to be used in multiple different teams thanks to her outro skill. It's always a blessing when you're able to provide skill percent. However, she was just never really best as slot anywhere except Danjin hypercarry teams, and 99% of Danjin mains are crazy people who would rather just play her solo. So with that in mind, there wasn't really much reason as to why you would get Cantarella before. But with Phrolova around, suddenly she feels like a really good pickup. I will say, she's still a relatively niche pickup, because when you pull for Cantarella, you are very much pulling for particularly a good Phrolova support. But with that being said, if you're a really big fan of the crazy conductor lady, then yes, she is an amazing choice to go for. Not only is the Jellyfish Lady's outro skill perfectly tailored to Phrolova's kit, but multiple of her abilities count as echo skills, and this is relevant when you consider that Hecate acts whenever an echo is cast. They are truly a match made in the Imperator-ordained heaven. She is amazing for Phrolova, and if you're a die-hard Phrolova fan, then I definitely recommend that you pick up the Jellyfish Lady. She is fantastic for her. Easily her best in slot, second slot teammate if you intend to play her as a hypercarry. You are able to play Phrolova in other ways as well that don't actually pertain to her being the main DPS, such as a second slot teammate in Gion or Phoebe teams, but if you intend to play her as a main DPS, which is her intended playstyle, then Cantarella is absolutely your best bet in that regard. And I really need to emphasize how much of a meta value boost this was to the Jellyfish Lady, because before, it was really rough. She was one of the bottom 5 worst limited 5-stars in the game. She wasn't bad per se, because she still had use cases at the end of the day. There's not really a truly bad 5-star in this game, I would say. Everyone can be used. But it definitely was rougher for her before. So I would say now that if you have Phrolova, while her free-to-play teams are indeed quite good for her, I will say that Cantarella is indeed going to be a meaty performance boost. I would definitely recommend her in such a case. Otherwise, you could also pull Cantarella because she has skill percent on outro. This generally just offers her a good amount of flexibility. It means that you're able to use her with characters like Jinchi, or even Carlotta, or basically just any main DPS for that matter that appreciates their skill percent being boosted. If you don't have Phrolova, there are other uses for her. I'd actually like to mention something in particular when it comes to Jinchi. She has coordinated attacks in her kit, meaning that she can help build up Jinchi's stacks. And if you want to use your Joja for Carlotta instead, then you're able to do so quite comfortably. So that's actually another situation in which you would actually like to pull for Cantarella, even if you don't have Phrolova. She's not necessary there. After all, WuWa is a thing, Yinlin is a thing, there are other options that can fill in for that role just fine, but she is indeed a good choice there. I will say, I wouldn't get her on that selling point alone. That's mostly relevant if you're somebody that just really doesn't care about Phrolova, but you still want to find a use for your Cantarella. Otherwise, I would really emphasize that her main selling point is being used with Phrolova. Otherwise, she also has good Havoc buffing within her kit. This isn't really going to matter to Camellia in particular because she would just rather use Sanhua. She does not want to pass up on all of that free basic percent. However, this actually ends up being good for Danjin because she too is able to perfectly leverage Cantarella's outro skill. It's very good if you want to play her on a casual hypercarry team. Of course, I understand, most Danjin mains are hardcore players but would never consider such a thing. However, if you're a rare case of somebody that actually just wants to play her more casually, then yes, Cantarella is actually a very good teammate there, especially considering that Danjin frequently dabbles in HP loss, so perhaps Cantarella can be more comfortable for you to play because she's able to provide healing. Now, would I go out of your way to pull Cantarella if you love Danjin? I would say it's a case where if you really love Danjin and you are super duper dedicated to maining her, then yes, it is a good pull for her. However, if you're not really insane about her and it's just kind of like a fun thing for you, I wouldn't indulge in an entire 5-star over it, because you need to consider how much of a cost that is in terms of pulls. However, it's still a good choice to make if you're a really big Danjin main. If you're not a really big Danjin main, I wouldn't go for it. However, it is indeed another use case for her. Otherwise, she just generally offers quite a large package. She heals, she can provide personal damage, and she's able to do buffing. Generally, there's a lot that she's able to do here. And I personally feel that Cantarella delivers on all of these aspects quite nicely. Her healing is really nice. Generally, healing doesn't matter that much in Wuthering Waves though. If you're good at the game, then it's just kind of like a nice bonus thing, if it's ever really going to be useful to you. And in most hyper-difficult endgame challenges such as hologram content, where you get basically one-shot by enemies, healing isn't really going to be that big of a deal. Unless you're able to heal up enough to the point where you're able to take another hit. But I will say that if you're a casual that tends to get hit a lot, then hey, it is a nice additional thing. I'd actually like to talk about her personal damage a little bit more. It's actually pretty decent. It's nothing crazy, mind you, but if you have her signature weapon, it's honestly pretty decent. Definitely good damage for a second slot teammate. I'd say if you don't have her signature weapon but you do have another 5-star, while her damage isn't necessarily going to wow you, it's still solid. It definitely gets the job done, and it's enough of a contribution to the point where it doesn't feel like her damage is completely worthless. And because she's able to buff on top of that, which is honestly the main reason that you would probably be pulling for her, she's able to do quite a lot at once. And I think she does all of those things quite well. I would say that it's not really a primary reason as to why you would get her. I wouldn't really pull for Cantarella if what you're looking for is a pure healer, simply because you're never really going to be playing her as a 3rd slot teammate. You would still want to be using Shorekeeper or Verena there, or just any other 3rd slot who's able to heal. She is very much designed to be played in the 2nd slot. Even in Triple Havoc, which does contain 3 Havoc units, you're still playing her as the middle character. Her healing is very much just a nice additional bonus. So if what you're looking for is a healer in particular, I wouldn't get Cantarella over that. Just wait until the next Shorekeeper rerun. You're going to get what you're looking for there. And in terms of her personal damage, well, like I said, I also don't really think that's a selling point, but I do think that it's a nice additional thing that she's able to provide on top of her main core functionalities. As always, I want to emphasize, her main good thing is that she's able to help Phrolova so much. And the really good thing about being able to help out Phrolova is that that's one heckin' strong DPS. She's proven herself to be quite strong, and is definitely on par with the rest of the 2.0 cast in terms of her damage numbers, and in her best install team with her signature weapon, Phrolova's honestly able to put in quite the work. In that sense, pulling for Cantarella gives you access to the character that's able to give you the highest possible potential Havoc team. But this then leads me into her cons. For starters, I do want to mention that yes, she is still quite niche at the end of the day. She is amazing for Phrolova. I really wanted to put an emphasis on that throughout the entirety of this video, and I feel like you've gotten the point at this stage. She's great for her. However, at the end of the day, she is still very much just for her. While there are other viable use cases in which you could employ your Cantarella and have her do quite well, she is very much tailored towards the Conductor lady, and if you're not interested in playing the Conductor, then there is far less reason to get Cantarella. She's going to be an extremely uninfluential pull on your account if you end up getting her without the Conductor. And I should add, she's just not really a flexible second slot teammate to invest into in general. Usually whenever you pull for one of these, they're pretty flexible across the entirety of your account, but I would say Cantarella is the least effective in that sense. For example, if you invest into your Triple Fusion team, you get Brand and Changli out of that. Those 2 units are very high value, and they're able to fit just about anywhere on your account. Unfortunately, Cantarella just doesn't have that same degree of flexibility afforded to her. So unless you're absolutely mesmerized by how much of a beautiful waifu she is, I would stop and think, do you really need Cantarella right now? Do you really need her for your Phrolova? Or are there other investments that you could be making that would be better for your overall account? Because like I said, when you get Cantarella, you're very much investing into Phrolova. On top of that, she can also be a little bit clunky. It's nothing too bad, I generally think that her gameplay is actually quite smooth. It's quite fun to use her. However, her enhanced skill can indeed be interrupted, which is a little bit annoying. And sometimes she can struggle to generate enough concerto energy before outroing. So you might have to add an extra attack or 2 onto your rotation. But otherwise, it's not really a big deal breaker. I would say if all of the pros that I've mentioned up until this point absolutely suit your account, then this really shouldn't put you off. This is more so just a minor nitpick that I'm throwing in there. This really shouldn't be the deciding factor as to whether you pull for her or not. That her gameplay can be slightly irritating at times. And even then, not really. Whenever you get a consistent Cantarella rotation, it honestly feels really good. And I personally quite enjoy her playstyle. Her animations are amazing. But either way, I do still think it was somewhat relevant to mention because it is something that comes up in gameplay. I do think Kuro Games has definitely done a good job at making Cantarella feel a lot more relevant. Now, if you pulled her back then, she doesn't really feel so useless anymore. And if you skipped her up until this point, well then hey, now you can pull her when she actually has a reason to be pulled. And here's the thing, Kuro Games just tends to generally be quite nice when it comes to their banner scheduling. Not all the time, but most of the time, when they can be, they try to do it in the most convenient way possible. Whenever Cantarella was first coming out, I mentioned how a somewhat pro but mostly con of hers was that she was definitely going to have future potential, but there was just no reason to get Cantarella then, because you could just wait for the future whenever she would actually be relevant. Kuro would definitely rerun her whenever she became relevant. And what do you know? That ended up happening. That exact scenario ended up happening. So if you skipped her the first time, I wouldn't feel bad, because she did end up being one of the more mid characters in terms of meta value. And if you feel she is now relevant to the current state of your account, I'd say you can invest in her. Now, I wouldn't expect her to suddenly get more teammates. I think she's pretty much just going to be fixed as she is now. But this could change in the future if we ever get more Havoc characters that are able to utilize her outro skill. After all, Cantarella's quite a popular character. She's very pretty at the end of the day. and I'm sure Crow is going to enjoy taking the opportunity to make her more useful when they can. With that being said, are you going to be getting Cantarella this time around, or is it a skip for you? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully this video is able to tell you Cantarella's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out, and honestly you can throw most pros and cons out the window of this character. I know what you are, I know why you want to get Cantarella.